When Arnold Phillips, a 34-year-old Uber driver from the Bronx, accepted what seemed like a routine ride to take Lone Williams, a 78-year-old woman from Manhattan's Upper East Side, he had no idea that in 30 minutes, he would become the most unlikely hero in New York City. How could a man who barely made enough to pay rent for his cramped Queens apartment manage to save the life of one of Wall Street's wealthiest women? And why did fate put these two completely different lives on the same path at such a crucial moment? This is the story of Arnold Phillips, a single father struggling to survive, who performed the extraordinary feat of pulling an elderly millionaire from a burning car seconds before an explosion that could have killed them both. On what appeared to be an ordinary Tuesday morning on the Upper East Side, what started as a simple $15 ride transformed into a lesson about courage, humanity, and how true heroes emerge in the most unexpected moments. Arnold Phillips had never imagined that his life would unfold the way it did. Born in San Salvador, El Salvador, he had come to the United States with his mother Maria when he was just 12 years old, carrying nothing but a backpack filled with their most precious belongings and dreams of a better future. His mother had worked 3 jobs to put him through school, cleaning office buildings at night, working in a laundry during the day, and taking care of elderly people on weekends. Arnold watched his mother sacrifice everything for his education, and he promised himself that he would make her proud by becoming the first person in their family to graduate from college. Arnold kept that promise, earning his associate degree in business administration from LaGuardia Community College, while working part-time at a Brooklyn warehouse to help support his mother. He had bigger dreams, though. Arnold wanted to get his bachelor's degree and maybe even start his own business someday. But life had other plans. When Arnold was 25, his mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and suddenly all their savings went toward medical treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Arnold dropped out of his bachelor's degree program to work full-time and take care of his mother, spending every free moment driving her to chemotherapy appointments and sitting by her bedside during the worst days. It was during one of those long nights at the hospital that Arnold met Sandra Rodriguez, a nurse who worked the overnight shift in the oncology ward. Sandra was beautiful, with kind eyes and a gentle way of speaking that made even the sickest patients smile. She paid special attention to Arnold's mother, staying after her shift ended to sit with Maria when Arnold had to work. And gradually Arnold found himself falling in love with this woman who showed such compassion to his dying mother. Sandra seemed to care about Arnold too. And when Maria passed away after a 2-year battle with cancer, Sandra was there to hold Arnold as he cried, promising him that they would get through the grief together. Arnold and Sandra were married 6 months after his mother's funeral, in a small ceremony at a Queens courthouse with just a few friends as witnesses. They moved into a tiny apartment in Elmhurst, and for a while, Arnold thought he had found happiness again. Sandra got pregnant almost immediately, and when Maya was born, Arnold felt like his heart might explode with joy. This perfect little girl with her mother's dark hair and his own determined chin represented everything good in the world, and Arnold promised Maya every single day that he would give her a better life than he had ever imagined for himself. But Sandra changed after Maya was born. The woman who had been so caring and compassionate at the hospital became distant and irritable at home. She complained constantly about being tired, about the crying baby, about their small apartment, and Arnold's warehouse job that didn't pay enough for the life she wanted. Arnold tried everything he could think of to make Sandra happy. He worked overtime to earn more money. He took care of Maya at night so Sandra could sleep. He even surprised her with small gifts he couldn't afford. But nothing seemed to work. Sandra grew more and more resentful, and Arnold could see her pulling away from both him and Maya with each passing day. When Maya turned 2, Arnold came home from work one evening to find a note on their kitchen table. Sandra had written that she wasn't ready to be a mother, that she felt trapped in a life she never wanted, and that she needed to leave to find herself. She had packed her clothes and disappeared, leaving behind her wedding ring, all of Maya's belongings, and a daughter who would grow up not understanding why her mommy didn't love her enough to stay. Arnold spent months trying to track Sandra down, hiring a private investigator with money he borrowed from his cousin Marcus. but Sandra had vanished completely, as if she had never existed at all. Arnold faced a choice that would define the rest of his life. He could give Maya up for adoption to a family who could provide for her better than he could, or he could raise her alone and figure out how to be everything she needed. For Arnold, there was never really a choice at all. Maya was his daughter, his responsibility, and the only family he had left in the world. He would work as many jobs as necessary, sacrifice anything he had to sacrifice, and make sure that Maya never felt abandoned again. Arnold promised his sleeping daughter that night that he would be both mother and father to her, and that no matter what happened, she would always know that she was loved completely and unconditionally. Raising Maya alone was harder than Arnold could have imagined. The warehouse job paid $12 an hour, which was barely enough to cover rent, groceries, and childcare. And Arnold quickly realized he needed to find additional income. He started doing odd jobs on weekends, painting apartments, moving furniture, cleaning out basements, anything that would pay cash and could be done while Maya was at daycare. Arnold would work from 5 in the morning until 10 at night, come home exhausted, and still find the energy to read Maya bedtime stories and help her with the alphabet flashcards he had bought at a dollar store. When Maya started kindergarten at PS 163 in Queens, her teacher Mrs. Patterson called Arnold in for a conference to tell him something that made his heart swell with pride. Maya was reading at a 3rd grade level and doing math problems that challenged kids twice her age. Mrs. Patterson suggested that Arnold consider applying for Maya to attend one of Manhattan's gifted and talented programs, schools that could nurture her exceptional abilities and set her up for success in life. Arnold researched these schools online at the public library, printing out application packets and studying the requirements late into the night after Maya went to sleep. The applications for the gifted programs required essays, standardized test scores, and interviews that would cost money Arnold didn't have. Each school had a $50 application fee, and Maya would need new clothes for the interviews, plus transportation costs to Manhattan for multiple visits. Arnold did the math and realized he would need at least $400 just to apply to 3 schools, money that represented 2 weeks of groceries and utilities. But when Arnold watched Maya reading chapter books at age 6, explaining complex problems with the patience of a teacher, and asking questions about the world that amazed even her smartest classmates, he knew he had to find a way to give her these opportunities. Arnold took on even more side jobs, working until midnight cleaning offices and getting up at 4 in the morning to deliver newspapers before his warehouse shift started. He saved every possible penny, eating ramen noodles for dinner while Maya had healthy meals, walking to work instead of taking the subway, and wearing the same 3 shirts until they were threadbare. After 6 months of this grinding schedule, Arnold had saved enough money to apply to 2 of the gifted programs. And when Maya was accepted to the Manhattan School for Advanced Studies, Arnold cried tears of joy and terror at the same time. Joy because his brilliant daughter would get the education she deserved, and terror because the school was in Midtown Manhattan, requiring transportation costs and expenses that would stretch their budget beyond its limits. The warehouse where Arnold had worked for 8 years closed down when Maya was in 2nd grade, a victim of automation and corporate cost-cutting that eliminated 200 jobs in a single day. Arnold received 2 weeks severance pay and a form letter thanking him for his service, but no explanation of how he was supposed to support his daughter with no income and no prospects for finding another job that paid as well. Arnold spent sleepless nights applying for every job he could find, from security guard positions to retail work. But most employers wanted younger workers or people with college degrees, and Arnold's 8 years of warehouse experience didn't translate to many other opportunities. It was Maya's 2nd grade teacher, Miss Rivera, who suggested that Arnold consider driving for Uber. Mrs. Rivera's husband drove for the company and made decent money working flexible hours that would allow Arnold to drop Maya off at school and pick her up every day. The idea of being his own boss appealed to Arnold, and after researching the requirements online at the library, he realized that driving for Uber might be the solution to their financial problems. The only obstacle was that Arnold didn't own a car, and buying one would require money he didn't have and credit he couldn't qualify for. Arnold's cousin Marcus had moved to New York from El Salvador 10 years earlier and had built a small business buying used cars at auctions, fixing them up, and renting them to other immigrants who needed transportation for work. Marcus offered to let Arnold use a 2018 Toyota Prius in exchange for 60% of his daily earnings, an arrangement that seemed steep but was Arnold's only option for getting back to work quickly. Arnold agreed to the deal, knowing that even 40% of his Uber earnings would be more than unemployment benefits, and at least he would be working instead of depending on government assistance. Learning to navigate New York City traffic as an Uber driver was terrifying at first. Arnold had learned to drive on the quiet streets of Queens, but suddenly he was expected to merge onto the FDR Drive during rush hour, navigate the narrow streets of Greenwich Village, and pick up passengers in neighborhoods he had never seen before. Arnold studied maps every night after Maya went to sleep, memorizing the fastest routes between major landmarks and learning which areas of the city were most likely to generate ride requests. He bought a phone holder for the Prius's dashboard and downloaded apps that would help him track his earnings and find the best places to wait for passengers. The first month of driving was financially devastating. Arnold was still learning the rhythm of the city, missing surge pricing opportunities because he was in the wrong neighborhoods, and spending too much money on gas because he didn't yet understand the most efficient routes. After paying Marcus his 60% and covering gas and car maintenance, Arnold was bringing home barely $80 a day. Not enough to cover rent and groceries, let alone Maya's school supplies and clothes. Arnold started driving 16-hour days, from 5 in the morning until 9 at night, surviving on energy drinks and dollar menu hamburgers while missing Maya's bedtime stories and homework help. Maya, who was now 8 years old and wise beyond her years, noticed that her daddy was always tired and stressed. She started doing her homework without being asked, making her own breakfast before school, and never complaining when Arnold had to leave her with Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor, instead of spending evenings together. Maya even started saving her lunch money, hiding crumpled dollar bills in a jar under her bed because she had overheard Arnold on the phone with the landlord, promising that rent would be paid as soon as possible. When Arnold discovered Maya's savings jar and realized his 8-year-old daughter was trying to help pay their bills, he cried harder than he had cried since his mother's funeral. That discovery was a turning point for Arnold. He realized that working himself to exhaustion wasn't just hurting him, it was hurting Maya too, and that he needed to find a better balance between earning money and being a present father. Arnold started reading articles online about successful Uber drivers, learning about the importance of customer service, strategic positioning, and building a base of regular customers who would request him specifically. He invested in small improvements to the car, buying phone chargers, bottles of water, and breath mints to offer passengers, and he practiced conversations that would make riders feel comfortable without being intrusive. Gradually, Arnold's earnings improved. His customer rating climbed from 4.1 to 4.9 stars, and he started receiving compliments from passengers who appreciated his clean car, his punctuality, and his respectful demeanor. Arnold discovered that wealthy passengers from Manhattan's Upper East Side and Midtown often tipped well if they felt he was professional and discreet, and he began positioning himself in those neighborhoods during peak hours. The extra income meant that Arnold could cut back to 12-hour days instead of 16, giving him time to help Maya with homework and read her bedtime stories again. Maya thrived with her father's renewed attention. Her grades, which had always been excellent, became even better, and she started participating in after-school activities that Arnold could finally afford. Maya joined the chess club, where she quickly became the youngest player ever to beat the middle school students, and she signed up for Saturday art classes at the local community center. Maya's teacher reported that she was not only academically gifted, but also showed remarkable emotional intelligence for her age, often helping classmates who were struggling with their work or dealing with problems at home. Arnold's proudest moment came when Maya won first place in the Queens Borough Science Fair with a project about renewable energy that she had researched entirely on her own. Standing in the auditorium watching his daughter accept her blue ribbon, Arnold felt like every sacrifice he had made over the past 6 years had been worth it. Maya looked out into the audience, found Arnold's face in the crowd, and smiled the same brilliant smile that had gotten him through the darkest days of their life together. In that moment, Arnold knew that no matter what challenges they faced, he and Maya were going to be okay. But Arnold still worried about their future. Maya was getting older and would soon need things that cost more money: a computer for school projects, clothes that weren't hand-me-downs, and eventually college tuition that would require savings Arnold couldn't imagine accumulating. Arnold dreamed of starting his own transportation business, maybe buying a few cars and hiring other drivers, but that would require capital and business knowledge he didn't possess. For now, driving Uber was paying their bills and giving Maya the stability she needed, but Arnold knew it wasn't a long-term solution to their financial struggles. That Tuesday morning in October started like any other day in Arnold's carefully structured routine. His alarm went off at 5:30, and Arnold quietly made coffee while Maya slept in their small bedroom, her homework neatly organized on the kitchen table where they had worked together the night before. Maya was studying multiplication tables and reading a chapter book about a girl who wanted to become an astronaut, a book that Arnold had found at a used bookstore because Maya had mentioned being interested in space science. Arnold loved these quiet moments before Maya woke up, sipping his coffee and reviewing his goals for the day while watching his daughter sleep peacefully. Arnold's daily goal was to earn $120 after paying Marcus his 60% and covering gas, a target that required him to complete approximately 15 rides if he chose his locations and timing carefully. Arnold had mapped out a strategy that started with early morning airport runs, transitioned to business commuters going from residential neighborhoods to midtown offices, and ended with evening entertainment rides from Manhattan back to the outer boroughs. This routine had allowed Arnold to consistently meet his financial goals while still being available to drop Maya off at school and pick her up every afternoon at 3:15. Maya woke up at 6:15, exactly as she did every morning, and padded into the kitchen wearing her favorite purple pajamas and carrying the stuffed elephant that had been her constant companion since she was 2 years old. Arnold had made her breakfast: scrambled eggs, toast, and orange juice, the same healthy meal he prepared every school day even when money was tight. Maya chatted about her upcoming math test while she ate, explaining the strategies she had learned for solving word problems and asking Arnold to quiz her on the multiplication table she had been memorizing. Arnold helped Maya get dressed in her school uniform, a navy blue polo shirt and khaki pants that he kept clean and pressed because he knew how important it was for Maya to feel confident about her appearance. Maya's backpack was bright pink with silver stars, a back-to-school gift that Arnold had saved for months to buy because Maya had seen it in a store window and mentioned how much she loved the colors. Arnold packed Maya's lunch in a small cooler bag: a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, an apple, a string cheese, and a juice box, along with a note that said, "Have a great day, mi amor," that Maya would find when she opened her lunchbox. The drive to PS 163 took 12 minutes through the residential streets of Elmhurst, and Arnold used this time to talk with Maya about her plans for the day, her friendships at school, and any concerns she might have about her classes or teachers. Maya was naturally outgoing and made friends easily, but Arnold had learned to listen carefully to her stories about school because they often revealed important information about her emotional well-being and academic progress. This morning, Maya was excited about a group project in social studies, where her team was creating a presentation about different countries. And Maya had volunteered to research Costa Rica because she wanted to learn about Central America. Arnold watched Maya run up the steps of her school building, her pink backpack bouncing against her small frame, and he waited until she disappeared through the front doors before driving away. This ritual of making sure Maya was safely inside the building was something Arnold never skipped, no matter how early his first ride request might be, because he remembered his own childhood fears about being dropped off at unfamiliar places and wanted Maya to always feel secure and protected. Arnold's first 2 rides of the morning were typical Queens to Manhattan commutes: a nurse heading to her shift at Presbyterian Hospital and a construction foreman going to a job site in Long Island City. Both passengers were regulars who recognized Arnold and appreciated his reliability. And both tipped well because Arnold always arrived exactly when promised and kept his car clean and comfortable. By 9:30, Arnold had earned $42, putting him ahead of schedule for reaching his daily goal. Arnold was parked outside the Starbucks on Lexington Avenue, drinking a small black coffee and reviewing his Spanish vocabulary flashcards, when his phone buzzed with a ride request that would change his life forever. The passenger was named Lone Williams, with a pickup location on East 68th Street near Central Park and a destination of John F. Kennedy International Airport. The ride estimate showed $28, which would bring Arnold's daily total to $70 before 10 a.m. An excellent start that would give him flexibility to take a lunch break and still meet Maya's school pickup time. Arnold had picked up hundreds of wealthy passengers over his 3 years of driving, mostly polite but distant people who treated him like he was invisible, spending their rides making business calls or typing on laptops. Arnold didn't mind these quiet rides because they allowed him to practice his Spanish listening skills with podcasts, and he was working toward becoming fluent enough to eventually translate documents or teach language classes as additional income. What Arnold disliked were passengers who made assumptions about his intelligence or education, treating him with condescension simply because he drove for a living instead of working in an office. The pickup address on East 68th Street was a stunning pre-war building with an ornate limestone facade, the kind of elegant architecture that Arnold admired during his drives through Manhattan's wealthiest neighborhoods. A doorman in a crisp navy uniform with gold buttons opened the car door, and out stepped a tiny elderly woman who couldn't have weighed more than 90 pounds. She was impeccably dressed in a cream-colored wool coat that looked expensive and sophisticated, carrying a small black leather purse and walking with a silver-handled cane that appeared to be an antique family heirloom. What struck Arnold immediately about Lone Williams was not her obvious wealth, but her genuine warmth when she settled into the back seat of his car. Instead of immediately pulling out a phone or laptop like most of his Manhattan passengers, Lone looked directly at Arnold, smiled, and said good morning with the kind of sincere interest that made him feel like she actually cared about his answer. When Arnold responded that he was having a good morning and asked how she was doing, Lone laughed and said she was nervous about flying, but excited to visit family, creating an immediate connection that was unusual for Arnold's professional interactions. As Arnold navigated through Central Park toward the FDR Drive, Lone asked about Arnold's family, and when he mentioned dropping his daughter off at school that morning, Lone wanted to know Maya's age, what grade she was in, and what her favorite subjects were. Arnold found himself sharing more personal information than he usually did with passengers, telling Lone about Maya's exceptional academic abilities, her love of science and reading, and her dream of becoming a doctor someday. Lone listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and making comments that showed she understood the challenges of raising a gifted child. Lone mentioned that she was flying to Boston to visit her nephew, explaining that he was the only family she had left and that these visits had become more precious to her as she got older. Arnold shared that he understood the importance of family connections, telling Lone about his own childhood in El Salvador and how his mother had sacrificed everything to give him opportunities in America. Lone nodded thoughtfully and said she admired people who honored their parents' sacrifices by working hard and raising their own children with strong values. The conversation flowed naturally as they made their way through Midtown Manhattan traffic, with Arnold explaining his background as an immigrant who had worked his way through community college while supporting his sick mother, and Lone sharing stories about her late husband and the challenges of growing older without children of her own. Arnold found himself feeling comfortable enough to mention his dreams of eventually starting his own business, maybe expanding beyond driving to create a small transportation company that could provide good jobs for other immigrants. What Arnold didn't know, as they chatted comfortably during their ride to JFK Airport, was that Lone Williams was worth $850 million, making her one of the wealthiest women not just in New York City, but in the entire United States. Her late husband had built a real estate empire that included some of Manhattan's most valuable commercial properties, and Lone had spent the 20 years since his death quietly managing their investments while donating enormous amounts of money to charities focused on education, healthcare, and immigrant services. Lone lived modestly despite her enormous wealth, maintaining the same small staff she had employed for decades, and rarely making purchases that weren't practical necessities. She drove herself in a 10-year-old Mercedes, shopped at the same grocery store she had used for 30 years, and wore clothes until they were worn out rather than following fashion trends. Her greatest regret was never having children, and at 78, she had been thinking more and more about what would happen to her fortune when she was gone, wondering how she could ensure that her money would make a meaningful difference in the world. But there was something else about Lone Williams that would prove even more significant than her wealth, something that connected her to Arnold in ways that neither of them could have imagined. 43 years earlier, when Lone was 35 and desperately trying to have children with her husband, she had made a decision that she had kept secret from everyone except her lawyer and her doctor. It was a decision born out of love and hope, and the kind of generosity that defined Lone's character. But it was also a decision that had haunted her for decades, filling her with questions about a life she had helped create, but never been allowed to know. The accident happened at exactly 10:17 a.m. at the intersection of 5th Avenue and East 68th Street, just a few blocks from where Arnold had picked up Lone less than 30 minutes earlier. A delivery truck carrying construction materials had been making a left turn when the driver, who would later admit to police that he had been texting while driving, lost control of the massive vehicle and ran straight through a red light at 40 miles per hour. Arnold saw the truck coming at the last possible second and tried to swerve to avoid the collision, but the enormous vehicle struck the passenger side of the Prius with devastating force. The impact sent the smaller car spinning across the intersection like a toy, metal screeching against asphalt as the Prius rotated 3 complete times before slamming directly into a concrete light pole with a thunderous crash that could be heard 6 blocks away. The force of the collision was so severe that the light pole cracked at its base and tilted at a dangerous angle, and the front end of the Prius was compressed by almost 3 feet, transforming the vehicle into a twisted mass of metal and broken glass. Arnold's airbag deployed instantly, filling the front of the car with white powder and the acrid smell of the chemical explosion that had potentially saved his life. Though he was shaken and disoriented, Arnold was able to unbuckle his seatbelt and push open his door within seconds of the crash, his hands cut from gripping the steering wheel but otherwise miraculously uninjured. But when Arnold turned to check on Lone, he was horrified to see that the passenger side of the car had been completely crushed. The door was jammed shut, and Lone was trapped in her seatbelt, conscious but clearly injured and unable to move. The smell of gasoline filled the air immediately, and Arnold could see a steady stream of fuel leaking from the damaged gas tank onto the hot asphalt below. Arnold's warehouse experience had taught him about the dangers of fuel leaks, and he knew that gasoline plus heat plus electrical sparks equals explosion, especially in a car that had just suffered severe electrical system damage. Arnold estimated that they might have only minutes, or possibly just seconds, before the situation became deadly for both of them. Arnold's first instinct was to call 911, but when he pulled out his phone, he discovered that the screen had been completely shattered in the impact, and the device wouldn't turn on. He looked around frantically and saw that several pedestrians were already calling emergency services. But Arnold also noticed something that filled him with terror. The gasoline leak was getting worse with each passing second, and the pool of fuel on the ground was spreading dangerously close to the delivery truck's engine, which was still running and emitting heat and electrical sparks. Arnold tried the passenger door first, pulling on the handle with all his strength, but the metal had been bent and twisted by the impact and wouldn't budge even an inch. The window had spider-webbed but hadn't completely shattered, and Arnold could see Lone through the broken glass, conscious but clearly in shock, with blood trickling from a cut on her forehead and her left arm hanging at an unnatural angle that suggested it was broken. Lone was trying to speak to Arnold, but her voice was weak, and he couldn't make out her words over the sound of the truck's engine and the growing crowd of onlookers. Arnold could hear Lone calling his name weakly from inside the car, and when he pressed his face close to the broken window, he could see that she was bleeding from multiple small cuts caused by flying glass, and her breathing appeared shallow and labored. She was trying to unbuckle her seatbelt with her right hand, but the mechanism had been damaged in the crash and wouldn't release. And even if it had worked, Lone clearly didn't have the strength to get out of the car on her own. Arnold realized that even if the fire department arrived immediately, they might not have time to extract Lone safely before the fuel ignited. The smell of gasoline was getting stronger by the second, and Arnold could see vapor rising from the spilled fuel as it began to evaporate in the warm October morning sun. Arnold remembered from his warehouse safety training that gasoline vapor was even more dangerous than liquid gasoline because it could ignite from the smallest spark, and the delivery truck's engine was still running just 15 feet away, its damaged electrical system potentially creating exactly the kind of sparks that could cause a catastrophic explosion. Arnold made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. Instead of waiting for the fire department to arrive with their specialized equipment and hydraulic tools, he was going to get Lone out of that car himself, using whatever means necessary and regardless of the personal risk. Arnold had never considered himself particularly brave, but as he looked at this kind elderly woman who had spent their entire ride treating him with dignity and respect, he knew that he couldn't live with himself if he stood by and watched her die when there was something he could do to help. Arnold ran to the back of his damaged Prius and popped open the trunk, which fortunately hadn't been damaged in the collision. He found the tire iron that came with the car's emergency kit, a tool he had never used but had seen in movies where people used them to break windows and pry open doors. Arnold also grabbed a small towel that he kept for cleaning the car's interior, thinking he might need it to protect his hands from broken glass, and a bottle of water that he always kept for passengers, in case Lone needed something to drink once he got her out of the car. By the time Arnold got back to the passenger side of the car, he could see that the gasoline leak was much worse, and the pool of fuel on the ground was now almost touching the hot metal undercarriage of the crashed delivery truck. Arnold estimated that they had maybe 5 minutes before the situation became unsurvivable. And that was assuming the fuel didn't ignite sooner from an electrical spark or the heat from the truck's engine. Arnold knew he had to move fast, but he also knew he had to be careful not to cause Lone additional injuries in his attempt to save her life. Arnold used the tire iron to methodically break out the remaining glass in the rear passenger window, creating an opening large enough for him to climb through while minimizing the risk of cutting himself on sharp edges. The sound of breaking glass attracted the attention of the growing crowd of onlookers, and several people started shouting at Arnold to get away from the car, warning him that it was too dangerous to go near the gasoline leak and that he should wait for professional rescuers to arrive. But Arnold couldn't hear their warnings anymore, and even if he could have heard them, he wouldn't have changed his mind. All he could focus on was Lone Williams. This elegant elderly woman who had asked about his daughter, listened to his dreams, and treated him like a human being worthy of respect and kindness. Arnold had met thousands of passengers in his 3 years of driving, but Lone was different, and he wasn't going to let her die trapped in a car while he stood safely outside waiting for someone else to take action. Arnold carefully climbed through the broken window, using the towel to protect his hands and arms from the sharp edges of glass that remained in the window frame. The interior of the car was filled with the overwhelming smell of gasoline mixed with the acrid odor of deployed airbags, and Arnold could see that the front of the car had been compressed so much that the dashboard was only inches away from where Lone was sitting. The steering wheel had been pushed back toward the driver's seat, and Arnold realized that if he had been even a few inches taller, he might have been crushed to death in the collision. Lone was conscious but clearly in shock, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear and confusion. When she saw Arnold climbing into the back seat, she managed a weak smile and whispered that she knew he would come back for her, that she could see in his eyes that he was the kind of person who didn't abandon people when they needed help. Arnold positioned himself behind Lone's seat and spoke to her in the calm, reassuring voice he used when Maya was frightened, telling her that everything was going to be okay and that he was going to get her out of the car safely. The seatbelt mechanism had been completely destroyed in the crash, and Arnold realized he would need to cut through the thick fabric to free Lone from the car. Arnold used a small pocket knife that he always carried for emergencies, carefully sawing through the seatbelt while trying not to jostle Lone too much in case she had internal injuries that could be made worse by sudden movements. As Arnold worked, he could hear sirens in the distance, but they still sounded far away, and the smell of gasoline was getting so strong that it was making both of them dizzy and nauseous. Once Arnold had cut through the seatbelt, he faced his biggest challenge, getting Lone out of the car without causing her additional injury. Lone weighed almost nothing, probably less than 100 pounds, but her left arm was clearly broken, and she was having trouble supporting her own weight or coordinating her movements. Arnold knew from first aid training he had received at the warehouse that moving someone with potential spinal injuries was dangerous. But he also knew that leaving Lone in a car that might explode at any moment was even more dangerous. Arnold positioned himself behind Lone and carefully lifted her under her arms, supporting her weight while talking to her constantly to keep her calm and conscious. Arnold told Lone about Maya, sharing stories about his daughter's intelligence and determination, her dreams of becoming a doctor, and her kind heart that reminded Arnold of Lone's own compassion. Arnold explained that Maya would probably want to become Lone's doctor someday because she was so interested in helping people and making the world a better place. As Arnold carefully maneuvered Lone through the broken rear window, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. A small popping noise followed by the unmistakable whoosh of igniting gasoline vapor. When Arnold looked toward the front of the car, he could see small flames starting to lick at the edges of the fuel pool, and he realized they had maybe 30 seconds before the fire reached the gas tank and caused an explosion that would kill them both. Arnold didn't panic, but he moved faster than he had ever moved in his life, lifting Lone completely clear of the car and carrying her as far away from the wreckage as his legs could take him. Arnold had carried Lone almost 50 feet from the accident scene, far enough to be outside the immediate blast radius. When the explosion happened, the sound was deafening, a thunderous boom that shattered windows in nearby buildings and sent a column of black smoke rising high into the clear morning sky. The force of the blast knocked both Arnold and Lone to the ground, but they were far enough away that they weren't injured by the flying debris of twisted metal and broken glass that rained down around them like deadly confetti. Arnold immediately covered Lone's body with his own, protecting her from the rain of small metal pieces and glass fragments that fell around them for several seconds after the initial explosion. Arnold could feel the heat from the burning car on his back, and when he looked over his shoulder, all he could see was a raging inferno, where the Prius had been just moments before. The Toyota that had been Arnold's livelihood for 3 years, his means of supporting Maya and working toward their dreams, was completely destroyed, reduced to a burning pile of twisted metal that would never drive again. But as Arnold looked down at Lone Williams, alive and breathing in his arms, he felt something he had never experienced before. The absolute certainty that he had made the right choice, regardless of the financial cost. Arnold had saved a human life, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the car that was gone, not the money he wouldn't be able to earn, not the uncertainty about how he would support Maya. Arnold had done something genuinely heroic, and for the first time in his adult life, he felt truly proud of himself. The paramedics arrived within minutes of the explosion, their sirens wailing as they navigated through the crowd of onlookers and emergency responders who had flooded the intersection. The EMTs quickly took charge of Lone's medical care, checking her vital signs, immobilizing her broken arm, and preparing her for transport to Mount Sinai Hospital, one of Manhattan's premier medical facilities. Before they loaded Lone into the ambulance, she managed to grab Arnold's hand with her uninjured arm and whispered something that Arnold would remember for the rest of his life. Lone told Arnold that in 78 years on this earth, she had never met anyone with as much courage and kindness as he had shown that morning, and that she would never forget what he had done for her. She promised Arnold that she would find a way to repay his heroism, and she made him promise that he would come visit her in the hospital so they could talk more about his daughter and his dreams for the future. Arnold promised, not knowing that this conversation would lead to revelations that would change both of their lives in ways neither could imagine. Arnold spent the next several hours at Mount Sinai Hospital, first being treated for his own minor injuries, cuts on his hands and arms from broken glass, and then waiting to hear about Lone's condition. The police took his detailed statement about the accident, praising his heroic actions and recommending him for a Civilian Bravery Award. A reporter from the New York Post interviewed Arnold about the rescue, asking how he had found the courage to risk his own life for a stranger. But Arnold found it difficult to focus on the questions because he was thinking about Maya and how he was going to explain that Daddy's car was gone, and he didn't know how he would pick her up from school. Arnold's cousin Marcus had heard about the accident on the radio and called to make sure Arnold was okay. But when Arnold explained that the Prius had been completely destroyed, Marcus was understanding but firm about the business implications. Without a car to drive, Arnold had no way to earn the daily payments that Marcus depended on, which meant their rental arrangement was over. Marcus offered to let Arnold work in his auto repair shop for minimum wage, but that would mean earning less than half of what Arnold had been making with Uber, not enough to pay rent and support Maya. By the time Arnold was released from the hospital, the story of the heroic Uber driver who saved an elderly passenger from a burning car was already spreading across social media platforms throughout New York City. Several bystanders had recorded video of the rescue on their phones, and the dramatic footage of Arnold climbing into the damaged car and carrying Lone to safety just seconds before the explosion was being shared thousands of times across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Arnold had no idea that he was becoming internet famous while he sat in the hospital cafeteria drinking terrible coffee and trying to figure out how he was going to support Maya without a car to drive. What Arnold also didn't know was that Lone Williams was not just any elderly passenger. As she lay in her hospital bed having her broken arm set in a cast and being treated for a mild concussion, Lone was thinking about the young man who had risked his own life to save hers. And she was making phone calls that would change Arnold's life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. The first call was to her lawyer, Harold Steinberg, who had been handling her legal affairs for over 15 years and was one of the few people who knew the full extent of her wealth and the secrets she had kept hidden for decades. The second call was to her nephew David in Boston, canceling their planned visit and explaining that something much more important had come up in New York. Something that might finally provide answers to questions that had haunted her for over 40 years. The third call was to her personal assistant, Margaret Chen, with very specific instructions about how to find Arnold Phillips, learn everything about his background and circumstances, and arrange a meeting that would need to happen as soon as possible, preferably before the media attention made private conversation impossible. Lone Williams had spent most of her 78 years surrounded by people who wanted something from her, whether it was her money, her social connections, or her influence in New York's philanthropic circles. She had developed a keen instinct for recognizing people's true motivations, and she prided herself on being able to see through the fake smiles and calculated kindness that wealthy people encountered every day. But Arnold Phillips was different, and Lone had recognized that difference from the moment he started talking about his daughter with such obvious love and pride. In the 30 minutes they had spent together in his car, and especially in the way he had risked everything to save her life, Lone had seen something that was increasingly rare in her world. Genuine goodness with no hidden agenda. Arnold hadn't known who she was or what she was worth when he climbed into that burning car, and Lone was certain that Arnold would have made the same heroic choice, regardless of whether his passenger was a billionaire or a homeless person. That kind of character was exactly what Lone had been searching for, and she had begun to suspect that her meeting with Arnold Phillips might not have been the accident it appeared to be. Arnold finally made it back to Queens late that evening, taking 3 different subway trains because he no longer had a car to drive and couldn't afford the cost of a taxi or rideshare. The journey from Manhattan to Elmhurst took over an hour on public transportation, and Arnold used the time to practice how he would explain the day's events to Maya without frightening her or making her worry about their financial security. Arnold knew that Maya was mature for her age and understood more about their struggles than he sometimes wished she did. But he also wanted to protect her from adult concerns as much as possible. Maya was waiting for Arnold at their neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment, where she went after school every day until Arnold picked her up. Mrs. Rodriguez was a widow in her 70s who had immigrated to Queens from Puerto Rico 50 years earlier, and she had become like a grandmother to Maya, teaching her Spanish phrases and helping with homework when Arnold was working late. When Maya saw her father's bandaged hands and the cuts on his face, she immediately started crying, afraid that something terrible had happened to him and that she might lose the only parent she had ever really known. Arnold sat down on Mrs. Rodriguez's couch and pulled Maya onto his lap, explaining in simple terms that he had been in a car accident, but that he was okay, and so was the elderly lady he had been helping. Arnold told Maya an edited version of what had happened, focusing on how sometimes grown-ups have to make difficult choices to help other people, even when those choices are scary, and how important it is to always try to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Maya listened with wide eyes, her small hands touching the bandages on Arnold's hands, as if she could make them heal faster with her love. Maya, who was wise beyond her 8 years, asked the question that Arnold had been dreading. "Daddy, is the car okay?" Arnold had to explain that the car had been too damaged to fix, that it had been completely destroyed in the accident. When Maya asked how Daddy was going to work without a car, Arnold felt his heart break a little bit because he didn't have a good answer. Arnold told Maya that everything would be okay, that Daddy would figure out a solution just like he always did. But privately, he was more terrified about their future than he had ever been, even during the worst days after Sandra left. Mrs. Rodriguez, who had been listening from the kitchen, brought Arnold a cup of coffee and sat down across from them. She had raised 5 children of her own and had seen enough of life to recognize real trouble when she saw it. Mrs. Rodriguez offered to let Maya stay with her for a few extra hours each day, while Arnold looked for work, and she refused to accept any payment for the additional childcare, saying that neighbors help neighbors and that Arnold had always been respectful and kind to her. Arnold was touched by her generosity, but he also knew that finding a job that would pay enough to support them would be nearly impossible without transportation. That night, after Maya had gone to sleep in their small bedroom, Arnold sat at their kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, trying to figure out how long their savings would last without his Uber income. The math was more depressing than Arnold had feared. They had exactly $437 in their checking account. Their rent of $800 was due in 12 days, and Maya needed new winter clothes because she was growing out of everything from last year. Arnold had always been resourceful and had overcome every obstacle life had thrown at him. But this time, he couldn't see a path forward. Arnold considered his options methodically. He could look for work as a security guard, but those jobs typically paid minimum wage and required working nights, which would mean leaving Maya alone or paying for overnight childcare that would eat up most of his earnings. He could try to get a job at another warehouse, but most companies wanted workers with recent experience and reliable transportation, neither of which Arnold could provide. He could apply for government assistance, but Arnold had always been proud of supporting his family through his own work, and the idea of depending on welfare felt like giving up on his dreams of building a better life for Maya. Arnold was so focused on his financial calculations that he almost didn't hear the gentle knock on their apartment door at 10:30 that night. Arnold rarely had visitors, especially not at such a late hour, and he approached the door cautiously, looking through the peephole before deciding whether to open it. Standing in the hallway was a well-dressed Asian woman in her 50s, holding a large flower arrangement and a manila envelope. She didn't look threatening, but Arnold couldn't imagine who would be visiting him so late, or why anyone would bring flowers to his modest apartment. Arnold opened the door with the security chain still attached, and the woman smiled warmly and introduced herself as Margaret Chen, personal assistant to Mrs. Lone Williams. Margaret explained that Mrs. Williams was doing well in the hospital and wanted to thank Arnold personally for saving her life, and that she had asked Margaret to deliver some flowers and a letter expressing her gratitude. Arnold was surprised that Lone had gone to the trouble of finding his address and sending someone to his home, but he was also touched by her thoughtfulness and the recognition that his actions had meant something to her. Margaret handed Arnold the envelope and the flower arrangement, which was more elaborate and expensive than anything that had ever been in Arnold's apartment. The flowers were white lilies and roses arranged in a crystal vase, and Margaret explained that Mrs. Williams had chosen them personally because white flowers symbolized new beginnings and hope for the future. Margaret also mentioned that Mrs. Williams hoped Arnold would be able to meet with her the following day to discuss how she might be able to help him replace his damaged vehicle and get back to work as quickly as possible. Arnold opened the envelope after Margaret left, and inside was a handwritten note from Lone thanking him again for his courage, written in elegant cursive on expensive stationery that probably cost more than Arnold's monthly grocery budget. But what made Arnold's hands shake was what he found beneath the letter: a check for $5,000 made out to Arnold Phillips, with a note in the memo line that said, "Immediate expenses and gratitude." Arnold stared at the check for several minutes, unable to believe that anyone would give him such an enormous amount of money. More money than he had ever possessed at one time in his entire life. $5,000 was enough to pay rent for 6 months, buy Maya everything she needed for school, and still have money left over for groceries and utilities. But what moved Arnold even more than the incredible generosity was Lone's handwritten note, which ended with the words, "You restored my faith in human goodness, and I hope to repay that gift in whatever way I can. Your courage reminds me that there are still people in this world who do the right thing simply because it's right, not because they expect something in return. I would be honored to call you my friend." Arnold barely slept that night, his mind racing between gratitude for Lone's incredible generosity, anxiety about meeting with such a wealthy and important person, and confusion about why someone he had known for 30 minutes would care so much about helping him. Arnold had never been inside a hospital as fancy as Mount Sinai, never been in a situation where someone wanted to have a business meeting with him, and he was terrified of saying or doing something that would embarrass himself or somehow disrespect Lone's kindness. Arnold understood that wealthy people lived in a different world with different rules, and he didn't want to make any mistakes that might offend Lone or make her regret her generosity. Arnold's only good clothes were a navy blue suit he had bought at a discount store for his mother's funeral 5 years ago, and he spent an hour that morning making sure it was clean and pressed perfectly. Arnold had learned to iron from watching his mother prepare for her cleaning jobs, and he took the same care with his appearance that she had taught him was essential for showing respect to employers and other important people. Arnold polished his only pair of dress shoes, practiced sitting and standing in ways that would look professional, and rehearsed what he might say to express his gratitude without sounding too emotional or overwhelmed. Maya was excited that her daddy was going to visit the lady from the accident, and she insisted on drawing a get well card with colorful markers, showing 2 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. Maya explained that the tall figure was Arnold, the shorter figure was Mrs. Williams, and the rainbow meant that everything was going to be okay, because Arnold had been brave and kind. Arnold tucked the card into his jacket pocket along with Lone's check, which he had endorsed but hadn't yet deposited because the amount still seemed too good to be true, like something that might disappear if he wasn't careful. Arnold took the subway to Manhattan, arriving at Mount Sinai 30 minutes early because he was too nervous to arrive exactly on time and risk being even a minute late. Arnold used the extra time to walk around the neighborhood surrounding the hospital, trying to calm his nerves and prepare mentally for what might be the most important conversation of his life. Arnold had no idea what Lone wanted to discuss beyond helping him replace his car, but he suspected that someone wealthy enough to give away $5,000 without thinking about it might have ideas and opportunities that could change his and Maya's lives completely. The hospital was unlike anywhere Arnold had ever been, with marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and the kind of quiet efficiency that suggested unlimited resources and the finest medical care money could buy. Margaret met Arnold in the lobby and escorted him through hallways lined with expensive artwork to the private wing, where Lone had a suite that looked more like a luxury hotel room than a hospital room. The suite had a separate sitting area with leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, and fresh flowers everywhere, creating an atmosphere of wealth and comfort that made Arnold feel both impressed and slightly intimidated. Lone was sitting in a chair by the window, her left arm in a sling, but otherwise looking remarkably well for someone who had nearly died in a car explosion less than 24 hours earlier. She was wearing a silk robe in pale blue that complemented her silver hair, and her green eyes were alert and warm as they had been during their ride to the airport. When Lone saw Arnold, her face lit up with the same genuine smile that had made him feel so comfortable during their first meeting. And Arnold felt some of his nervousness fade away as he remembered that beneath all her wealth and elegance, Lone was simply a kind person who cared about others. Lone immediately asked about Maya and whether Arnold's daughter had been worried about the accident. And Arnold pulled out the get well card Maya had made with such care and excitement. Lone studied the drawing carefully, commenting on Maya's artistic talent and the thoughtfulness of her message, and asking Arnold to please thank Maya for such a beautiful and meaningful gift. Lone said that the card would be displayed prominently in her home, and that she hoped someday she might have the opportunity to meet Maya in person and tell her what a wonderful father she had. Then Lone got down to business, explaining that she had been thinking all night about how to help Arnold get back on his feet, and that she had some ideas that she hoped he would consider carefully. Lone said that Arnold's heroic actions had reminded her of something she had almost forgotten in her years of wealth and privilege, that the most important things in life weren't money or possessions, but the connections between people and the way individuals could make a difference in each other's lives through acts of courage and kindness. What happened next would change everything Arnold thought he knew about luck, generosity, and the kind of opportunities that were supposed to be reserved for other people. But as Arnold sat in that elegant hospital room listening to Lone Williams outline her plans for his future, he had no idea that the woman sitting across from him was about to reveal a secret that would connect their lives in ways that went far deeper than a chance encounter in an Uber ride, and that the explosion that had destroyed his car was actually the beginning of the most important relationship of both of their lives. Lone reached for a folder that Margaret had placed on the table beside her chair, and Arnold could see that it contained documents and photographs that looked official and important. Lone explained that before she discussed her plans for helping Arnold, there was something about her own past that she needed to share with him, something she had never told anyone except her lawyer and her doctor, and something that might explain why she felt such an immediate connection to Arnold and Maya. Lone said that what she was about to reveal might seem impossible to believe, but she asked Arnold to listen with an open mind and to understand that everything she was about to tell him came from a place of love and hope that had sustained her through 40 years of wondering and waiting. Lone opened the folder and pulled out a black and white photograph that was clearly decades old, showing a young woman who looked remarkably like Lone herself, holding a newborn baby. Lone explained that the photograph had been taken 43 years ago, when she was 35 years old and desperately trying to have children with her husband. After years of failed attempts and heartbreaking miscarriages, Lone and her husband had been told by doctors that they would never be able to have biological children, news that had devastated them both and almost ended their marriage. But Lone had heard about a program at a Catholic charity in Queens that helped young women who were pregnant and unable to care for their babies, women who needed financial support during their pregnancies, and wanted to ensure their children would have better lives than they could provide. Lone and her husband had contacted the charity and been matched with a 17-year-old girl named Maria Gonzalez, who was pregnant and alone and needed help more than anything else in the world. Lone had paid for all of Maria's medical expenses, provided her with a place to live during her pregnancy, and promised to adopt the baby and give him the best possible life. Arnold felt his heart stop beating as Lone continued her story, describing a teenage mother from El Salvador who had named her baby Arnold and had made the heartbreaking decision to give him up for adoption so he could have opportunities she couldn't provide. Lone explained that she and her husband had been at the hospital when Arnold was born, had held him as a newborn, and had been prepared to take him home and raise him as their own child. But at the last moment, Maria had changed her mind, unable to go through with the adoption and deciding that she would find a way to keep her baby no matter how difficult their life might be. Lone said that she had never seen Arnold again after that day in the hospital, but that she had never stopped thinking about him or wondering what kind of man he had become. Lone had secretly provided financial support for Maria and her son for several years, sending anonymous payments through the charity to help with rent and medical expenses. But when Maria and Arnold moved away from New York, Lone had lost track of them completely. For 40 years, Lone had wondered about the baby she had almost adopted, the child she had loved for 9 months before he was even born, and whether he was safe and happy, and living the kind of life she had dreamed of giving him. As Arnold stared at the photograph of his mother holding him as a newborn, everything about his life suddenly made sense in a way it never had before. The mysterious payments that had helped his mother afford their apartment when he was young, the medical bills that had somehow been paid when his mother was sick, the scholarship money that had appeared just when he needed it most to attend community college. Arnold realized that Lone Williams had been his guardian angel for his entire life, watching over him from a distance and helping in ways he had never known or understood. Arnold's hands trembled as he held the black and white photograph, seeing his mother's face when she was just 17 years old, younger than Arnold could ever remember her being. Maria looked so young and frightened in the picture, but also determined, holding her newborn son with a fierce protectiveness that Arnold recognized from his own feelings about Maya. Arnold thought about all the stories his mother had told him about their early years in New York, how they had always managed to scrape by even when things seemed impossible, and how Maria had always insisted that God was watching over them and sending help when they needed it most. Lone watched Arnold process this revelation, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks as she saw the recognition dawn in his eyes. She explained that losing Arnold had been the greatest heartbreak of her life, worse even than her inability to have biological children, because for 9 months she had loved him as if he were already her son. Lone described how she had prepared a nursery in their Manhattan apartment, bought clothes and toys and books, and dreamed about the life she would give this child who needed parents who could provide for him. When Maria changed her mind at the last moment, Lone said she understood and respected the young mother's decision, but it had left a hole in her heart that had never completely healed. But Lone couldn't simply walk away from the child she had already loved for so long. Working through the Catholic charity, Lone had continued to provide anonymous financial support for Maria and Arnold, always making sure the payments looked like they came from government programs or charitable organizations, so that Maria's pride wouldn't be hurt and she wouldn't feel obligated to someone she had disappointed. Lone had paid for Arnold's medical care when he was sick as a child, supplemented Maria's income when she was between jobs, and even contributed to the scholarship fund that had helped Arnold attend LaGuardia Community College. Arnold remembered the scholarship now, how the letter had arrived just 2 weeks after his mother was diagnosed with cancer, providing exactly the amount of money he needed to continue his education while working to support her medical treatments. The scholarship had been from something called the Williams Foundation Educational Fund, and Arnold had always assumed it was named after some long-dead philanthropist, never imagining that Williams was the surname of a woman who had loved him before she ever met him. Arnold realized that Lone had been part of every major milestone of his life, silently supporting him and celebrating his achievements from a distance. Lone explained that when Maria died 5 years ago, she had wanted to reach out to Arnold directly, but her lawyer had advised against it, saying that Arnold might feel manipulated or obligated if he knew about her involvement in his life. Instead, Lone had continued to help anonymously, contributing to a fund that paid for Maya's after-school programs, and even ensuring that Arnold's cousin Marcus got the loan he needed to expand his car rental business, creating the opportunity that had allowed Arnold to start driving for Uber. Every blessing Arnold thought had been luck or coincidence had actually been Lone's way of taking care of the child she had never been able to raise. Arnold finally found his voice, asking Lone why she was telling him this now, why she was revealing a secret she had kept for over 40 years. Lone took Arnold's bandaged hands in her own small, soft hands and explained that when she saw him risk his life to save her in that burning car, she knew that Maria had made the right decision all those years ago. Arnold had grown into exactly the kind of man Lone had hoped he would become: brave, selfless, and devoted to his family. Lone said that Arnold's heroism had given her the courage to finally tell him the truth about their connection, because she realized that their meeting in the Uber wasn't an accident at all, but fate bringing them together at exactly the moment when they could finally know each other as the family they had always been meant to be. Lone explained that she was now 78 years old, with no children or grandchildren of her own. and that her greatest fear was dying without knowing that her fortune would be used to make the world a better place. She had established charitable foundations and donated hundreds of millions of dollars to worthy causes. But Lone had always felt that something was missing from her philanthropy. A personal connection that would make her giving meaningful rather than just generous. Meeting Arnold and learning about his dedication to Maya had shown Lone what had been missing. She wanted her money to help specific people whose character and values she knew and admired. But Lone was careful to explain that her offer to help Arnold wasn't charity or pity, and it wasn't an attempt to buy a relationship with him or Maya. Lone said that Arnold had already proven his worth through 40 years of hard work, sacrifice, and moral choices that showed exactly who he was as a person. The help Lone wanted to provide was simply one family member helping another, the same way Arnold would help Maya if she needed it, or the way he had helped his mother during her illness. Lone wanted Arnold to think of her not as a wealthy benefactor, but as the woman who had loved him since before he was born, and who wanted to be part of his and Maya's lives if they would allow it. Arnold was overwhelmed by the magnitude of what Lone was telling him, but he was also deeply moved by her obvious sincerity and the way she spoke about Maya with such genuine affection, despite never having met her. Arnold asked what kind of help Lone had in mind, expecting her to offer to buy him a replacement car or maybe provide some money to tide him over until he could find another job. What Lone proposed instead was so far beyond Arnold's imagination that he initially thought he had misunderstood her words. Lone explained that she wanted to establish a trust fund that would ensure Maya could attend any college she wanted without Arnold having to worry about tuition, room, and board, or any other expenses. The trust would also provide Arnold with enough income that he could reduce his working hours and spend more time with Maya during these crucial years of her childhood. Maybe even finish his own bachelor's degree if that was something he still wanted to pursue. Lone wanted to buy Arnold a house in a good neighborhood with excellent schools, not a mansion that would make him uncomfortable, but a real home where Maya could have her own bedroom and a backyard to play in. The kind of stable environment that would support her academic and emotional development. But Lone's plans went even further than immediate financial security. She wanted to help Arnold start the transportation business he had dreamed about, providing the capital and business guidance that would allow him to become an entrepreneur, rather than just a driver working for someone else's company. Lone envisioned Arnold eventually employing other immigrants like himself, people who were hardworking and reliable but needed opportunities to build better lives for their families. Lone said that seeing Arnold's business succeed would give her the same pride and satisfaction that she would have felt watching her own son achieve his dreams. Arnold listened to these proposals with a mixture of amazement and anxiety, unable to believe that such life-changing opportunities were being offered to him, but also worried about the implications of accepting such enormous help. Arnold had always been proud of supporting his family through his own efforts, and he was concerned that accepting Lone's assistance might compromise his independence or create obligations that he couldn't fulfill. Arnold explained to Lone that he was grateful beyond words for her generosity, but that he needed to understand what she would expect from him in return, and whether there were conditions or requirements that would come with her support. Lone smiled at Arnold's caution, saying that his concern about maintaining his dignity and independence was exactly what she would have expected from the man she knew him to be. Lone explained that her only expectation was that Arnold would allow her to be part of his and Maya's lives, not as someone who controlled their choices or interfered with their decisions, but as a family friend who cared about their happiness and wanted to celebrate their successes. Lone said that she hoped Arnold might be willing to bring Maya to visit her occasionally, and that maybe someday Maya might think of her as a grandmother figure who could share stories about Arnold's mother and help Maya understand her family's history. Lone also explained that all of her financial assistance would be structured through legal trusts and business arrangements that would protect Arnold's autonomy and ensure that he never felt beholden to her or dependent on her continued goodwill. The house would be owned by Arnold free and clear. The education fund would belong to Maya regardless of Lone's future decisions, and the business loan would be a legitimate investment with fair terms that Arnold could repay through the profits of his own hard work. Lone wanted Arnold to understand that she was offering him opportunities, not handouts. and that his success would depend on his own character and efforts just as it always had. Arnold asked for time to think about Loan's proposals, explaining that such major life changes required careful consideration and discussions with Maya about how these opportunities might affect their lives together. Loan immediately agreed, saying that good decisions shouldn't be rushed, and that Arnold's thoughtfulness about these choices was another indication of his wisdom and maturity. Loan gave Arnold her private phone number and asked him to call her within the next few days after he had time to process everything they had discussed and decide how he wanted to move forward. As Arnold prepared to leave the hospital, Loan asked him to wait for one more moment while she retrieved something else from the folder on her table. She pulled out a sealed envelope and explained that it contained a letter Maria had written to Arnold shortly before her death. A letter that Maria had asked the charity to deliver to Loan with instructions that it should be given to Arnold only when the time was right. Loan said that she had carried this letter with her for 5 years, waiting for the opportunity to deliver it, and that Arnold's heroic actions had convinced her that he was ready to read his mother's final words to him. Arnold accepted the letter with trembling hands, recognizing his mother's handwriting on the envelope that was addressed simply to "My beloved son, Arnold." Loan suggested that Arnold might want to read the letter privately at home, where he could process his mother's words without feeling observed or rushed. Arnold agreed, tucking the letter carefully into his jacket pocket next to Maya's get well card, 2 pieces of paper that suddenly seemed like the most precious things he owned. The subway ride back to Queens gave Arnold time to begin processing the incredible revelations of the past hour, though he knew it would take much longer to fully understand the implications of what Loan had told him. Arnold thought about his mother's sacrifices, her determination to raise him alone, despite the offers of help from people who could have given him material advantages she couldn't provide. Arnold realized now that Maria had known about Loan's continued involvement in their lives, had probably recognized the anonymous financial assistance and understood where it was coming from, but had never told Arnold because she wanted him to grow up believing in his own strength and her ability to provide for him. Arnold arrived home to find Maya doing her homework at their kitchen table, her math worksheets spread out neatly and her pencils arranged in a perfect row according to size. Maya looked up when Arnold walked in, immediately noticing that her father looked different somehow, more surprised and thoughtful than she had ever seen him. Maya asked if the hospital visit had gone well and whether Mrs. Williams was feeling better, and Arnold sat down beside his daughter, trying to find words that would help an 8-year-old understand that their entire lives were about to change in ways she couldn't imagine. Arnold told Maya that Mrs. Williams was recovering well and that she had asked specifically about Maya's drawings and her school projects, showing genuine interest in Maya's life and achievements. Arnold explained that Mrs. Williams had grown up without children of her own, and that meeting Maya's father had reminded her how important families were and how much she enjoyed talking to people who loved their children the way Arnold loved Maya. Arnold said that Mrs. Williams had some ideas about ways she might be able to help their family, but that he wanted to think carefully about her suggestions before making any decisions that would affect Maya's future. Maya, with the intuitive wisdom that had always amazed Arnold, asked if Mrs. Williams was rich enough to help them buy a new car so that Daddy could work again. Arnold smiled at his daughter's practical focus on their immediate needs, explaining that Mrs. Williams was indeed wealthy enough to help with a car and other things too, but that accepting help from someone meant thinking carefully about how it would change their relationship and their independence. Maya considered this seriously, then asked the question that went straight to the heart of the matter. Do you think Mrs. Williams is a good person who really wants to help us? Or is she trying to get something from us? Arnold was struck by Maya's mature understanding of the complexities of accepting help from others, realizing that his 8-year-old daughter already understood lessons about pride and obligation that many adults never learned. Arnold told Maya that he believed Mrs. Williams was genuinely good, and that her offers of help came from kindness rather than any desire to control or manipulate their family. Arnold explained that Mrs. Williams had admitted to feeling lonely and had expressed hope that she might be able to spend time with both of them occasionally, but that she had promised not to interfere with their decisions or try to change the way they lived their lives. Maya asked if she could meet Mrs. Williams soon, saying that she wanted to thank her personally for being nice to Daddy and for caring about their family when she didn't have to. Maya also said that if Mrs. Williams was lonely, maybe they could invite her to have dinner with them sometimes because Maya knew how to cook spaghetti and could make a salad to go with it. Arnold was touched by Maya's generous spirit and her immediate acceptance of Lone as someone who could be part of their extended family, and he promised Maya that they would arrange a meeting very soon so she could get to know Mrs. Williams and decide for herself whether she liked her. That evening, after Maya had gone to bed, Arnold sat at their kitchen table and carefully opened the envelope containing his mother's final letter. Maria's handwriting was shaky, clearly written during the last stages of her illness, but her words were clear and filled with the love and wisdom that had guided Arnold throughout his life. Maria began by telling Arnold how proud she was of the man he had become, how she had watched him overcome every obstacle with determination and grace, and how she knew that he would be an even better parent to Maya than she had been to him. Maria then revealed that she had always known about Lone Williams's involvement in their lives, had recognized the anonymous financial assistance, and had been grateful for the help even though her pride had prevented her from acknowledging it directly. Maria explained that she had made the decision to keep Arnold rather than allow Lone to adopt him because she had believed that growing up with his biological mother, despite their financial struggles, would give Arnold a stronger sense of identity and self-reliance than being raised by wealthy adoptive parents who might have protected him from the challenges that ultimately made him strong. But Maria also wrote that she had never regretted Lone's continued presence in their lives, and that she had always hoped that someday Arnold would meet the woman who had loved him since before he was born, and who had helped make possible every opportunity he had ever received. Maria said that Lone Williams was a good woman who had suffered the heartbreak of being unable to have children, and that if fate ever brought Arnold and Lone together, she hoped Arnold would be open to allowing Lone to be part of his and Maya's lives. Maria's letter concluded with advice that Arnold would carry with him for the rest of his life. She wrote that the most important thing she had learned as a parent was that love was not about giving children everything they wanted, but about giving them the tools they needed to create good lives for themselves. Maria said that she had tried to teach Arnold the values of hard work, kindness, and responsibility, and that she believed these lessons would serve him well regardless of whatever material advantages he might gain or lose throughout his life. Maria ended by telling Arnold that she would always be proud of him, that she knew Maya was lucky to have him as a father, and that she hoped he would remember that the greatest gift he could give his daughter was not money or possessions, but the example of a man who lived with integrity and treated others with compassion. Arnold cried as he read his mother's words, understanding for the first time the full complexity of the choices Maria had made throughout his childhood, and the wisdom behind decisions that had sometimes seemed arbitrary or difficult. Arnold realized that his mother had been preparing him his entire life for the opportunity that was now being presented to him, teaching him to be humble enough to accept help when it was offered with good intentions, but strong enough to maintain his own identity and values regardless of his circumstances. The next morning, Arnold called Lone and asked if he could bring Maya to meet her, explaining that his daughter was curious about the woman who had been so kind to her father and wanted to express her own gratitude for Lone's generosity. Lone was delighted by the prospect of meeting Maya, and they arranged to have lunch at a quiet restaurant near the hospital, where they could talk privately without the formal atmosphere of Lone's hospital suite or the modest surroundings of Arnold's apartment. Maya dressed carefully for the lunch meeting, choosing her best school dress and asking Arnold to help her brush her hair until it was perfectly smooth. Maya had spent the morning drawing another picture for Mrs. Williams, this one showing three figures holding hands under a sun with a smiling face, and she had practiced what she would say to thank Mrs. Williams for helping their family. Arnold was touched by Maya's seriousness about making a good impression, and he reminded her that she should just be herself because that was exactly who Mrs. Williams hoped to meet. The restaurant Lone had chosen was elegant but not intimidating, the kind of place that served excellent food in an atmosphere that encouraged conversation rather than showing off wealth. Lone arrived first and was waiting at a corner table when Arnold and Maya walked in. And Arnold could see immediately that Lone was nervous about this meeting, probably more nervous than Maya was. When Lone saw Maya for the first time, her face lit up with joy and recognition, as if she were seeing a beloved grandchild after a long separation. Maya approached Lone with the perfect manners that Arnold had taught her, extending her hand for a handshake and introducing herself politely. But Lone surprised them both by asking if she could give Maya a hug instead, explaining that she was a hugger and that handshakes seemed too formal for people who were about to become friends. Maya immediately agreed, and Arnold watched with emotion as these two people who meant everything to him embraced for the first time. Lone's eyes filling with tears as she held the child who represented the future she had always dreamed of being part of. The lunch conversation flowed naturally, with Lone asking Maya about her favorite subjects in school, her friends, her hobbies, and her dreams for the future. Maya answered thoughtfully, clearly enjoying the attention from an adult who listened to her responses with genuine interest and asked follow-up questions that showed she cared about Maya's opinions and experiences. Maya told Lone about her science fair project, her chess club victories, and her goal of becoming a doctor who could help sick children feel better. Lone shared stories about her own childhood, her travels around the world, and some of the interesting people she had met during her long life. Maya was fascinated by Lone's descriptions of different countries and cultures, and she asked dozens of questions about places she had only seen in books and documentaries. Arnold could see that Maya and Lone were developing a genuine connection based on mutual interest and affection, not just politeness or obligation. When Maya excused herself to go to the bathroom, Lone told Arnold that meeting Maya had convinced her that everything she wanted to do for their family was absolutely right. Lone said that Maya was exactly the kind of intelligent, curious, kind-hearted child who deserved every possible opportunity to develop her talents and achieve her dreams. Lone explained that her greatest regret in life was not having children or grandchildren to spoil and support, and that being able to help Maya succeed academically and socially would give Lone's life a sense of purpose and joy that she had been missing for decades. Arnold told Lone that after reading his mother's letter and seeing how naturally Maya and Lone connected, he was ready to accept her offer of help with gratitude and without reservations. Arnold explained that he would work harder than ever to prove worthy of Lone's faith in him, and that he would make sure Maya understood the importance of using her opportunities wisely and giving back to others when she was older. Lone smiled and said that Arnold's commitment to earning whatever help he received was exactly what she had expected, and that his focus on teaching Maya to be generous and responsible was proof that he would be a good steward of the advantages she wanted to provide. When Maya returned to the table, Lone asked if she would like to see the house that Lone was thinking about buying for their family, explaining that it was in a neighborhood with excellent schools and a backyard where Maya could play and maybe even have a garden if she was interested in learning about plants and flowers. Maya's eyes widened with excitement at the prospect of having her own bedroom and a yard, luxuries she had never imagined possessing, and she asked Arnold if they could really accept such an incredible gift from their new friend. Arnold explained to Maya that Mrs. Williams wanted to help their family because she cared about them, and because she believed that Maya had the potential to do great things with her life if she had the right opportunities. Arnold said that accepting help from someone who offered it with love and generosity was not shameful, but that it also meant they would have a responsibility to work hard, be grateful, and help other people when they were able to do so. Maya nodded seriously and promised that she would study harder than ever and would always remember to help other kids who needed support. The house viewing took place the following Saturday, and Arnold could barely contain his amazement as they toured the 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet neighborhood in Bayside, Queens. The house had hardwood floors, updated appliances, a large kitchen where Maya could do homework while Arnold cooked dinner, and a master bedroom that was larger than their entire current apartment. Maya's bedroom would have built-in bookshelves, a window seat perfect for reading, and enough space for a desk where she could work on school projects. The backyard had mature trees, flower beds that needed tending, and plenty of room for Maya to play or invite friends over. Lone watched Arnold and Maya explore their potential new home, clearly delighted by their excitement and wonder. She explained that the house was in the district for one of Queens's best elementary schools, where Maya would be challenged academically and have access to advanced programs for gifted students. The neighborhood was safe and family-friendly, with parks and a library within walking distance, and the commute to Manhattan would be reasonable for Arnold's future business ventures. Arnold asked about the financial arrangements, wanting to understand exactly how the house purchase would work and what his obligations would be. Lone explained that she would buy the house outright and transfer ownership to Arnold immediately, with no mortgage payments or ongoing financial obligations. The only requirement was that Arnold maintain the property and pay normal homeowner expenses like taxes, utilities, and repairs, costs that would be much more manageable than their current rent payments. Lone said that she wanted Arnold to own the house completely so that he would always have security and stability, regardless of any changes in their relationship or her future circumstances. Maya asked if she could have a dog once they moved into the house, explaining that she had always wanted a pet, but their apartment building didn't allow animals. Lone immediately endorsed the idea, saying that every child should have a dog to teach them about responsibility and companionship, and offering to help Maya research different breeds to find one that would be a good fit for their family. Arnold was touched by Lone's enthusiasm for Maya's happiness and her willingness to support even the small details that would make Maya's childhood special. The business planning meetings took place over the next several weeks, with Lone introducing Arnold to her lawyer and financial advisor so they could structure his transportation company as a legitimate business venture. Lone's team helped Arnold develop a business plan, secure the necessary licenses and permits, and identify the best vehicles to purchase for his initial fleet. Lone provided a low-interest loan that would allow Arnold to buy 3 reliable cars and hire 2 experienced drivers, immigrants like himself who needed stable employment with fair wages and respectful treatment. Arnold named his company Maya Transportation Services, honoring his daughter while also creating a business that would eventually provide Maya with financial security and a legacy of entrepreneurship. Arnold's first 2 employees were Carlos, a man from Guatemala who had been driving taxi for 15 years, and Rosa, a woman from the Dominican Republic who had worked for various car services but had never had the opportunity to work for a company that offered health insurance and paid vacation time. The business grew steadily, with Arnold's reputation for reliability and professionalism attracting regular customers who appreciated his punctual service and clean vehicles. Arnold reinvested most of his profits back into the business, purchasing additional cars and hiring more drivers, always maintaining the high standards that had made him successful as an individual Uber driver. Within 6 months, Maya Transportation Services had 8 vehicles and employed 12 people, becoming exactly the kind of business that strengthened the immigrant community by providing good jobs and excellent service. Maya thrived in her new school and neighborhood, making friends easily and excelling in all her classes, while also participating in after-school activities that had been impossible when she and Arnold lived in their small apartment. Maya joined the school's robotics club, started taking piano lessons, and became the youngest member of the local library's summer reading program planning committee. Arnold was amazed to watch his daughter bloom socially and academically, now that she had the stability and resources to pursue her interests fully. Lone became a regular presence in their lives, joining them for dinner once a week and attending Maya's school events like the proud grandmother she had always wanted to be. Lone helped Maya with science projects, took her to museums and cultural events in Manhattan, and shared stories about different countries and cultures that inspired Maya's growing interest in international relations and global health issues. Maya began talking about someday becoming a doctor who could travel around the world helping children in developing countries, a dream that combined her love of science with the values of service and compassion that both Arnold and Lone had modeled for her. Arnold completed his bachelor's degree in business administration through evening classes, finally achieving the educational goal he had set aside when his mother became ill. Lone attended Arnold's graduation ceremony, sitting with Maya in the front row and applauding loudly when Arnold's name was called. Arnold dedicated his achievement to his mother's memory and to Maya's future, acknowledging that none of his success would have been possible without the support of people who believed in him and the opportunities they had provided. 2 years after the accident that brought them together, Arnold and Maya's life had been transformed beyond anything Arnold could have imagined when he was driving Uber 16 hours a day just to pay rent on their small apartment. Maya Transportation Services employed 22 people and was being considered for a contract to provide transportation services for several Manhattan hotels. Maya was in 4th grade, reading at an 8th grade level, and already being scouted by prestigious middle schools that wanted to recruit her for their advanced academic programs. But the most important transformation was the relationship that had developed between Arnold, Maya, and Lone, a family bond that was based on love, respect, and shared values rather than legal obligations or financial arrangements. Maya genuinely loved spending time with Lone, calling her Grandma Lone, and turning to her for advice about school projects, friendship problems, and her dreams for the future. Arnold had found in Lone not just a benefactor, but a wise friend who understood the challenges of balancing ambition with integrity, and who supported his decisions even when they involved taking risks or making sacrifices. Lone, who had spent decades wondering what had happened to the child she had almost adopted, finally had the family she had always dreamed of. She watched Arnold build a successful business through hard work and ethical practices, exactly the kind of man she had hoped he would become. She saw Maya growing into a brilliant, compassionate young woman who would someday make important contributions to the world. Most importantly, Lone no longer felt alone or uncertain about the legacy she would leave behind, because she knew that her wealth was being used to support people whose character and values would ensure that her generosity would continue making a positive difference for generations to come. The story of Arnold Phillips, the Uber driver who saved a billionaire and discovered that she had been his guardian angel his entire life, became more than just a viral news story. It became a reminder that heroism comes in many forms, that kindness and courage are often found in unexpected places, and that the connections between people can transcend social class, wealth, and the circumstances that seem to separate us from each other. Arnold's willingness to risk his own life to save a stranger demonstrated that true character reveals itself not in moments of convenience, but in moments of crisis, when we must choose between our own safety and our obligation to help others. Maya's maturity and wisdom showed that children who are raised with love and strong values can thrive regardless of their material circumstances, and that the best investment any society can make is in the education and development of young people who have the potential to make the world better. Lone's generosity and her decision to reveal the truth about her connection to Arnold proved that wealth becomes meaningful only when it is used to create opportunities for others, and that the relationships we build through kindness and mutual respect are more valuable than any material possessions we can accumulate. Their story reminds us that we are all connected in ways we may never fully understand, that the stranger sitting next to us on the subway or in the back seat of our car might be someone whose life is intertwined with our own, in ways that will only be revealed when we treat them with the dignity and respect that every human being deserves. Arnold Phillips started that Tuesday morning as a struggling single father driving Uber to pay rent on a small apartment in Queens. He ended that day as a hero whose courage had saved a life and whose character had earned him a family and opportunities beyond his wildest dreams. But Arnold would tell you that the real transformation wasn't in his circumstances, but in his understanding that the most important things in life, love, courage, integrity, and the connections we make with other people, were things he had possessed all along. Maya Transportation Services now operates a fleet of 30 vehicles and employs over 50 people, providing not just transportation, but opportunities for immigrant families to build better lives in America. Maya Phillips is now in high school, maintains a 4.0 GPA, volunteers at a local hospital, and has been accepted to a summer program for gifted students interested in global health and international development. She still calls Lone Williams Grandma Lone, and Lone still attends every one of Maya's school events, as proud of her achievements as any biological grandmother could be. And every Tuesday morning, Arnold Phillips takes a moment to remember the accident that changed his life, not because it brought him wealth or material success, but because it taught him that sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually the beginning of the best things, and that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to do what is right despite our fear. The true measure of a person's character is not what they accomplish when the path is easy, but what they choose to do when faced with impossible odds and the opportunity to make a difference in another person's life. Arnold Phillips chose to be a hero, and in doing so, he discovered that heroism is not about being perfect or fearless, but about being willing to act with kindness and courage when it matters most. If you found this story inspiring, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell for more incredible true stories about ordinary people who do extraordinary things. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes walk among us every day, and that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a simple act of kindness toward a stranger who might turn out to be family.